describes when you're sick and how that makes you angry. And in combination, when the weather is not moving speedily along enough toward beautiful days. There's got to be an S in there and a W in there, so swangry. I'm not sure if that's going to catch on, but I was just thinking this morning, man, why can't life just roll out the way that I want it to? We're supporting a church plant in Delta Junction, Alaska, and the lady there who is helping lead the charge, she fell on the way into church, and she's being rushed to the emergency, or I don't know about rushed, but they're going to the emergency room, and a lot depended on her for the morning service, so they had to cancel church in Delta Junction. And I just, again, why can't things just go, in this smooth way? Does anybody ever feel that way? Yeah, okay. Well, it's appropriate to the stories we're going to work through this morning, because there are things that just don't go the way you would want them to go. And the thing that kind of comes to my mind is Paul says in Ephesians 6, he says, our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, principalities, spiritual authorities in the unseen realm. But that first thing, our battle, and then he talks about putting on spiritual armor, and that's kind of, it's not the only place. There are quite a few places where our life in Christ is described as a battle, like we sign up for a battle. Not super appealing on most days. We're gonna see that the battle is worth fighting, and that there are these moments where God breaks in and gives us a glimpse of the battle lifting for a moment, and for there to be times of celebration. In fact, his promise to us is that at the end of this experience of life, that we're going to have such an extraordinary celebration that we will look back on the battles we have fought here, and they will appear to us as light and momentary. Can you imagine that? I can't. Maybe you have a better imagination than I do, but to look at some of the things we go through here and to imagine a celebration that's so good that what we are experiencing now is just light and momentary. Now, the only reason I can start to believe in that promise is because I've seen God do some extraordinary things, and I've had these little glimpses. So I think maybe that is true. Maybe that will be the case. But in the meantime, we're in this battle. So that's the story. Encouraging, yeah? Let's see if we can find a little bit of hope this morning, shall we? 1 Samuel. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 13 and start off in verse 13. I got to warn you, it's not going to get better right away. How foolish, Samuel exclaimed. He's speaking to King Saul, if you don't know the story. You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. Had you kept it, the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom must end, for the Lord has sought out a man after his own heart. The Lord has already appointed him to be leader of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command. Did I say we're going to try to work toward hope? If you don't know this story, the people of Israel have tired of trusting God on a seasonal basis to watch over them politically. And so they have asked for a king. They want to be like the nations around them. They want to have a secure economy protected by a military with forts and stuff, and with an army that's at the ready at any moment. And so they want this king to rally behind, somebody to, blow the trumpet and rally the troops. And so God has acquiesced. Oh, you want a king? You want to experiment with that route? Well, okay, I'll raise up for you, I'll appoint for you a king. And so he appoints Saul, who is a head taller than all the other dudes in Israel. So he's this tall, handsome, appropriate choice for king, at least just sort of looking at things on the surface. Saul is not as confident as he appears. He's this big, tall, handsome guy, but inside he has a lot of insecurities, does not feel equipped for leadership. And in a situation that this sort of culminates in, Saul ends up failing to lead. Instead, he just falls into peer pressure and violates God's command by not waiting for Samuel and doing what he thinks is a good thing by offering a burnt offering to the Lord before they go into battle. Samuel shows up and tells him that this was foolish. God is no longer with you. You have lost the opportunity to be in eternal covenant with God, and your position of king is going to be removed from you. Wow. Anybody ever read the scriptures and you think, God is intense? God is really, really intense. Then we read other stories where, say, a woman who is caught in adultery is brought to Jesus, and he is asked whether or not she should be stoned or what should be done with her, and he shoos everybody away because they are not perfect, and then he tells her to go and sin no more. And you're like, whoa, that's an incredible level of grace. We've got a problem, don't we? A God who is both incredibly intense and a God who is incredibly full of grace. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to solve that tension for you today. That's one of the great things about Christianity, and I say that sarcastically, is that we have to live in some tensions. There are some things where there's just this tension, or, at some point we just sort of throw up our hands and say, well, it's good that God is perfect in his judgment. But that's not always a satisfying answer, is it? Man, I'm just giving you guys a lot of problems today, aren't I? Let's see what happens as we go through here. Just kind of working our way through 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel 14 and verse 14. Jonathan is speaking to his armor bearer, and he says these words. He says, "Perhaps the Lord will help us, for nothing can hinder the Lord. He can win a battle, whether he has many warriors or only a few." Now, if you don't know this story, Jonathan is Saul's son, so he's in line to become king, and the Israelites have been given this order by God to take over this land. The sins of the people in the land of Canaan have piled up to such a degree that he is using Israel to be his instrument of wrath. And they are going in and they are clearing out the nation of Israel. And the problem is this group called the Philistines. And they seem to be a powerful group and very difficult for Israel to deal with. And Saul has run up against them with his army, and they are kind of in this position where everybody's had to kind of hunker down. They have no way to advance. Israel at this point has virtually nothing in terms of weapons. The Philistines are quite well armed. So nothing seems to be happening, but Jonathan, a young, bold, courageous, perhaps not as smart or as wise as he should or could be, but he decides he is going to do something about it. He decides that Israel needs a hero. And there's a particular outpost on top of a ridge that is sort of pinning the Israeli troops down. And Joshua takes just his armor bearer and decides he is going to go and he is going to single-handedly take control of that outpost, this sort of fortified little area that's controlling access to where the Israeli troops need to get to. And that's when he says, perhaps the Lord will be with us. Now that's some serious courage. Not very many people in our world do those kinds of things, where they put their own life, their own security, their own safety at risk and say, well, maybe. I've heard about a God that can do miracles. I've heard about a God who can provide extraordinary strength. Jonathan, for example, has heard the stories of Gideon and Samson. This is what he grew up hearing, these stories. He's heard about a God who stands with and stands behind and goes before people who step out courageously to do things that are against the odds. And Jonathan decides he wants to give it a go. He has not heard from the Lord. He has not had a secret meeting with Samuel. There is nothing, he hasn't had a vision. There's nothing telling Jonathan that he is going to win this battle. As far as Jonathan knows, he's going up against quite a few other men, and he is very likely to lose. But he has seen that God seems to do extraordinary things on behalf of Israel in general. And he has seen that Israel needs a hero. Something needs to happen if Israel is going to fulfill its mission. And so Jonathan steps into that, knowing nothing but just the general character of God. I think that's where we are for the most part, right? I mean, I don't regularly get visions from God. In fact, I'll say I've never had a vision from God telling me to do some extraordinary thing. But I'm trying to do an extraordinary thing anyways, because I know the heart and the character of God. It's possible that the enemy is not as intimidating as he appears. It's possible that God has given us more power, more ability than we are aware of. It's possible that God is waiting for us to step into something that requires great courage because he wants to meet us there, and he is waiting for us to take a step of faith in that direction. Something to think about in your spare time when you're alone with the Lord. 1 Samuel chapter 17, and starting in verse 32. This will connect you to a story that you've probably heard at least the title of before, the David and Goliath story. David tells Saul, "Don't worry about this Philistine. I'll go fight him." "Don't be ridiculous," Saul replied. "There's no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy, and he's been a man of war since his youth." If you're unfamiliar with the story, Goliath is the Philistine champion. They are well armed, they are well versed at battle, but Goliath is 9 feet 6 inches tall. 9 feet 6 inches tall. And by the description of his armament, we get the idea that he's not just tall and skinny, but he is like massively strong as well. It's interesting, in archaeology, various archaeological finds, they've found beds that are 13 feet in length in like ancient Samaria and so forth. And there's a lot of descriptions in Egyptian writings and Sumerian writings about giants. And in fact, they, in a lot of situations, would they believed that these giants were like part God, like demigods. Like they had, not only were they huge, but they also had some dark spiritual powers associated with them. So you can understand then Saul's reaction to David. Okay. And the scene is that Goliath has come out and challenged anybody in the army of Israel to come out and fight against him. And if they can beat him, then all the Philistines will become the slaves of the Israelites. Or vice versa, which is more likely, which is why nobody from the Israelite army is stepping out to meet Goliath. Not even Jonathan. Not even Jonathan, who, interestingly enough, has a little bit of experience in fighting against the odds. He has seen God do an extraordinary miracle through him. But there's something about Goliath that is truly extraordinary. But David persisted. That's an interesting quality for somebody who does extraordinary things. David persisted. This is a situation, too, where David has not heard from the Lord. Samuel has not come to David and said, "Hey, this is the one thing you're going to have to do in order to sort of advance your cause." David has not had a vision from God. David is operating on two things. One is a command that God has given the people of Israel to clear out the land and to take it, and a general faith in God's character. He has been anointed by Samuel to be the future king of Israel. But David does not know if that gives him like superpowers. He's operating based on this faith thing where he trusts God fully and completely, and that allows him to step into and be persistent about stepping into impossible seeming situations. I'm guessing there's some situation in your own life that seems impossible. Maybe reconciling a relationship with somebody in your family or a friend. Maybe overcoming an obstacle at work. Maybe your supervisor has an especially hard heart toward you and others. David persisted. "I've been taking care of my father's sheep and goats," he said. "When a lion or bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth." Whoa. If you ever want to have an interesting experience, you can go to one of the gun stores in Anchorage. And you can just ask the question, so what caliber would you recommend for bear defense? Oh, that's when it gets fun. Because this person is going to recommend something, and then the other person behind the gun counter, they can't resist the question. And they're going to start giving their input. And then the other customers who are there, they can't resist the question either. So they're going to give their input. There's all these different theories. We have bear spray, of course, as an alternative if you don't want to get violent with the bear. But one option is a club. You could just carry David's club with you. I imagine it was something like one of those fish whackers that we use. And just go up, and if it happens to turn on you, if it doesn't just immediately release the lamb or your child maybe, just grab it by the jaw. And just whack-a-mole that thing until it releases whatever it's taken, maybe you. So that's an option. Do we get an idea of David's courage, his intensity, and his trust in God to watch over him? So David, well, I'll read the rest of this. I have done this both to lions, plural, and bears, plural, and I'll do this, and I'll do it to this pagan Philistine too, for he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. Saul finally consented. All right, go ahead, he said, and may the Lord be with you. Saul is consenting to a much more than just letting this boy go out and sacrifice his life. Right? Because the agreement is, if Israel sends somebody out to fight and he loses, then all of Israel becomes slaves to the Philistines. So David has done a very good job of convincing Saul that he can be completely confident in David. I'm guessing not very many people in Israel at the time went after their sheep in this manner. I think most shepherds said, ooh, lost another one. If you know the story, you know that David goes and chooses 5 stones, and as Goliath starts coming toward him to engage in the fight, it says that David runs toward Saul, or toward Goliath. He runs toward Goliath. And this is my dream for myself, that when I get into a situation where I am going to step into something that's fearful, that I step into it by running into it. Because I so trust that God is with me. And because I am ready to give everything for that. But one of the reasons David is running is to build up some speed. David is a slinger. And you can get online and check some of these things out, but they still have slingers today. used differently these days. Usually there's something incendiary in the sling. So he's running to build up some speed to close in on his target. He's been out there hunting bears and lions and other animals. He's a shepherd, so watching sheep is only so exciting. And I'm guessing that he's had quite a bit of practice with his sling. This is before the iPhone. And so I'm going to think that this is probably one of David's primary forms of entertainment. And so he's sprinting toward Goliath. At the same time, he is swirling his sling around. And he's building up momentum. And we're told that David most likely could have sent a good-sized projectile, say something like a rock the size of, say, a baseball, through the air at about 200 miles per hour. Has anybody ever watched a baseball game? Have you noticed that the guy in the batter's box is wearing a helmet with a thing that comes down and covers his ear, and then they've added the thing that comes down and covers your jaw? Because some pitchers can throw the ball at speeds of like 104 miles per hour. And if they don't have that helmet on and they get hit in the head, they are going to die or be seriously injured. So now if you take that same baseball and you ramp it up another 100 miles per hour, you get the picture? Goliath is massive, but he is slow. Part of Goliath being massive is that he has a massive forehead. It makes a really nice target. This is why tall people should really reconsider becoming soldiers. You know, if you're short, you're good to go. David slays Goliath. And Israel wins a great victory that day. And David's prominence, his popularity in the country is secured. This is where the story actually gets quite confusing, though. God anoints David to be the next king. David steps in with incredible moxie and courage and slays Israel's biggest enemy. You would think that's like an up and to the right, I'll do it this way for your sake, an up and to the right trajectory, right? Like we're feeling pretty good. David ends up being placed as the captain of Saul's elite guard. He ends up marrying the king's daughter. And then Saul starts trying to kill him. He throws spears at him regularly. Not just as a game, but he's trying to kill David. And then he gets his elite soldiers and he starts chasing David. David is on the run. This would be confusing if you're David, right? Hey, I thought I was the anointed one, right? I thought things were going to go up and to the right. You can read quite a few of David's Psalms, and they're referring to this time period in his life where he's on the run from King Saul. His life is constantly under threat. In one case, as Saul is chasing after him, Saul gets the idea that these priests have helped David. The priest claims they have, yes, helped him, but unknowing that he's an enemy of King Saul. And so Saul has all of these priests. There's I think maybe 90 priests that he kills. So Saul is intensely chasing David with all the power and authority of Israel after him. You can see how David might be a little bit confused, yeah? 1 Samuel chapter 20. We'll pick up in verse 28, but this is where Jonathan comes back into the story. Jonathan is not fully convinced that Saul wants to kill David. David's been trying to convince Jonathan that, yes, your dad is trying to kill me. You see, after Jonathan witnesses David kill Goliath, he goes up to David and they create this pact of friendship. Jonathan actually gives him his royal robe and his sword, his shield. He gives him like one of the few armament pieces that Israel has, and commits to a bond of friendship with David, that basically anything David needs or wants, Jonathan is going to be there for him, and likewise. They plan this scenario out where Jonathan will get to see Saul's heart in the matter firsthand. And it's by David being absent from a festival meal. David eats at the king's table, is supposed to eat at the king's table, and his absence will go noticed, or will be noticed. And so the deal is that Jonathan is supposed to, when Saul says, "Where's David?" Jonathan is going to answer the question, and you'll see that, verse 28. Jonathan replied, "David earnestly asked me if he could go to Bethlehem. He said, 'Please let me go, for for we are having a family sacrifice.'" That they're not sacrificing their family, they're like, having